Yeah, so so hello, a very warm welcome to the VAR show, the show which talks about all of these major football leagues in detail. Today, we are going to connect him with interviews, and we have Mr. Pat Nevin with us. who has played for the likes of Chelsea, Everton, and the Scotland international team among a host of other teams. So, first of all, I would like to thank Pat for coming. On the show, taking out time from his busy schedule and coming and talking to us. And Pat, I would like to begin by asking you, how are you and what have you been doing during these turbulent times in a way probably is difficult for almost everyone all around the world?
It is, but I have been very fortunate with my job, which is one of my many jobs, is commentating and co-commentating on football. And a certain amount of people, very, very small number of people, have to go to the games to do the commentaries. And I'm one of them. So in the last few months, 6 months, 9 months, I've been going to just as many games as I usually do. Just the other week there, last week, I was at the Everton 5 Tottenham Hotspur 4 game. Before that, I was at a Wolves game. I cover a number of the Chelsea games, well, a lot of the Chelsea games as well. I tend to be sent by the BBC to do Manchester City quite frequently, which is always good fun. But it's very strange, as you can imagine, being in the stadiums, being one of very, very few people in the stadiums. Um, but when you're traveling, you have to be very, very careful when you're working. Everyone has to be careful traveling just now. But working with the BBC, you make sure you don't travel on public transport. There's no trains. You don't go on the flights. I drive everywhere on my own. I take my own food. When you get to a football ground these days, it's very interesting because it's about the safest place there is. And there's so many checks. There's, you have to, it takes about 30 or 40 minutes to get into the ground. Sometimes you go through so many checks and everyone is very well distanced from each other. So I cannot complain about these turbulent times because I've been very fortunate. I haven't lost anyone very close to me, and I've been able to do my job quite a bit. And I know so many people would love to be doing what I'm doing, which is going to watch football games just now. So I never complain.
Definitely. And you said like how you are going to games frequently, to maybe cover them. And although being the football ground being the most safest, probably just because of the finances being involved, they can't take a risk, for the players especially. Is it scary because although the pandemic is kind of died out, at least in terms of fear, but it's still there. I mean, like people are still dying daily, and back of your head, I mean, like everyone doesn't die, but you never know. Is that fear that something that lies between you?
No, not at all. I have none, no fear whatsoever. I understand the danger, and there is danger for everyone. I am no longer 21 years of age, so that makes a difference as well. Um, but you have to get it in a perspective. You quite simply have to do the best you can from within the situation you are. Now, my daughter is a frontline doctor in the hospitals here in the UK. And the things that she's told me and the things that she has seen and the danger that she was in, that puts mine in perspective. And my daughter is, I can't go about complaining when I know what she has gone through. Um, and if I can tell you a slight side story about my daughter went to a place called Pokhara. I don't know if that's how you say it,
Yeah, yeah,
near Sarangot Mountain. And she stayed there as a doctor for, it was about 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. And she was there for only about 2 months and she had the most beautiful time. But there were difficult times, and everyone in Nepal will know there are, beautiful country, but difficulties of its own. And Lakshmi and Bishma, who took care of her while she was there, were fabulous, fabulous people. And I'm so happy. And by the way, I want to come to Nepal one day. But she's gone through and told me the difficulty she saw with the hardships that many people in Nepal have suffered, and then back to the UK and the hardships that people are suffering in the hospitals every day. I can't complain. So she has gone through so much more than me, and I'm very, very proud of what she's done. So yes, be very, very careful. Always make sure you keep your distances. Make sure your hands are always washed and cleaned. we wear the mask all the time, and we're very, very careful. And I think if you're like that, and I'm very fortunate that I'm really quite healthy. After I talk to you, I'm going to go for a big long run up a hillside, so that kind of helps as well. But it doesn't matter. You could still be caught out, but you have to keep it within a perspective, and that's what we try to do.
So does the BBC or the other broadcast, if any, you work for limits going out or something?
No, they don't. In the country here at the moment in the UK, we are in lockdown. So if I go out, you go out for exercise, you go out to buy food from the shops and the supermarket, and that's it. Other than that, and your work, if you cannot do your work from home, that's it. You don't go out. So that's where we are just now. The BBC or nobody has to limit your. The government's doing that just now, and it's very small. Every government's different, and strangely, the government in Scotland is different from the government in England for the rules, which is very odd because I live 5 minutes from the border of both countries. So, and we haven't got a border guard. So it's unusual. I think what you have to do is be very sensible. And hopefully I am very sensible. And I'm very fortunate. My daughter, as I mentioned, she's a frontline worker. She's had the first COVID jab that we've started rolling out here in the UK. My son has also had it because he is a driver for special needs children. My wife takes care of children at the school who have special needs. She is getting hers today, her first jab today. I'm the only one who won't get it. I won't get it for about another 3 months. But we carry on and we are positive. It's most important that the people in most need get the jabs first, and that's all that is important.
Definitely. And coming from the previous answer, like you should definitely visit Nepal. And although, but I think it's more chaotic than probably where you're living right now in terms of even small thing like pandemic, like maybe staying indoors. And you said like how you should be sensible. But probably maybe people aren't that sensible. Not only here, but it's maybe you have that in the batches of people across the world in every country. So probably you should visit whenever everything dies out. And yeah, I
It,
think like
I understand it's difficult. Many cultures are different. In the UK, the culture of many different levels of the family, 4 or 5 different age groups together, that's not so big a thing in the UK anymore. Where I do know that that is the case in countries like Nepal and many, many others. So there is major difficulties. And also we have financially, I think a lot of places in the UK are very, very well off. They have a lot of money in comparison to many countries. So it's easier to do it when you have money. It's much easier. So I wouldn't complain about Nepal. By the way, Nepal's a certainty. I will come to Nepal one day. There are many reasons for this. My daughter has told me so many things. My older brother, Thomas, he has traveled Nepal extensively 3 or 4 times. And he tells me some great, great stories. He lived for many years in Singapore and Hong Kong and traveled all the way through the east of the world. And he always says Nepal is just a place you must visit once in your life, at the very least. So I would definitely come down. And I also have another friend who you look quite young, Subhashish. However, this friend of mine who I've got to know very well over the last couple of years, a chap called Stephen Constantine, and he used to be the manager, I believe, of the Nepali team. And he tells me some great stories about Nepal as well. So I think once this all finishes, I will be a visitor.
yeah. So I think Stephen has been like a huge name in this part of the world, not only Nepal because he was at India and other places
Yeah,
also, and where he had a lot of impact. I think one of the former Chelsea players also Graham, no sorry, Tottenham
Graham
player Graham,
Roberts.
yeah. So he was also there. I mean, like he also has been like with Nepal, Pakistan. So even he's quite aware of like this area. So you should definitely visit someday.
Yeah. You don't have to talk me into it. I will look forward to it.
Definitely. And like so I'll move on to maybe football and probably the reason of the show and why football? Like how did it start?
Well, it's an interesting story. I had been studying at school and I played football. My dad taught me every single day. So I went training with my dad. after he finished work every day for 1, 2 hours. I played football all the time. I played with the young boys clubs. Um, and then when I was about 12 years of age, I get signed as a schoolboy for a very large Scottish club, Celtic. And they signed me as a schoolboy. The strange thing is, I didn't want to be a footballer. And it's a very unusual thing, I think, for most people who end up doing football as a job. I loved playing football, absolutely loved playing it. But the idea of doing it as a job never crossed my mind. My whole family were involved in education. They all got degrees. I have, you know, three brothers, two sisters. They all had degrees. So when the time came, I chose the education and I went and started studying for my degree. And while I was doing that, I played some part-time football for fun. And a small team called Clyde picked me up. And, I still didn't want to be a professional footballer, from a full time because I wanted to finish my degree. And then very soon afterwards, things went well. And Chelsea tried to buy me. And this is how much I didn't want to be a footballer. I turned Chelsea down for a whole year and said, no, I want to finish my degree here up in Glasgow. So it sounds very strange to most people, but to me, it made perfect sense. I loved playing it. I didn't play it for money. I didn't play it for fame. I played it for the love of the game, the pure joy of the game. So it didn't matter if I played for with my friends or a small team in Scotland or a big team in London. It's just playing was fun. So I knew I was okay. I could play. I was a good, decent player. Um, but slowly but surely, every time I tried not to become a professional, somebody pushed me towards being a professional. So eventually, I just took a chance and went down to have a 2 year, you know, period playing for Chelsea. I finally accepted their offer, and I took a 2 year contract with them. And I was very small. I'm still not very tall, but I was very thin. I was only 19, and I didn't cost a lot of money. They didn't expect me to do very well. And by the end of that season, I was Chelsea's Player of the Year. So I think they were as surprised as I was. It all went amazingly well. And so because of that, I ended up having a 19 year as a professional.
So at any moment, like you said, like you preferred or you prioritized your education probably over anything else, and would like did you, at any point do you think, okay, like I will leave football and get back to maybe some form of education, maybe any sort?
Yes, I did. In fact, can I say that's a great question you've asked? Because, if I did want to make sure that my education was, correct, because football can finish at any minute. It doesn't last forever. And in those days, maybe the money wasn't nowhere near where the money is now. And if you get a bad injury, you have to find another job. So yeah, I'd considered it quite a few times during my career to stop and either go back and do education or do something else. And it came close a couple of times. But the thing is, with other jobs and other lives you can have, they can wait. There's certain things, if you're using your mind, that can wait until you're 30 or 40. Not football. Football can't wait. Football has to be done when you are young and when you have the body for it. So each time I thought, I will continue playing football, but I had other interests and hobbies and often other jobs when I was playing as a professional. I was writing for various newspapers and magazines, usually about music and art. I became the chairman of the Professional Footballers Association, which is the union, and a variety of things. If I thought I could help or I could do something, I would learn about it and I teach myself. So very, very fortunate position to play football, to get paid fairly well, and be also able to follow your other interests. And one of my main other interests, and you probably guessed it by the conversation we've already had, is that I love traveling. I absolutely love traveling. So the big downside of this pandemic is you cannot travel. but I am a fanatical traveler around as much as I possibly can. I love seeing A, beautiful countries, but B, other other people's, you know, it's a thing that I've always wanted to understand that little bit more. And as I've traveled around the world, I've learned a lot about other people and their cultures, but I've learned more about myself because you don't see things through a single lens. And it would maybe one country that made a big difference was oddly enough South Korea. I went to South Korea, the World Cup. I'm from UK. Now every country is like this. Every country thinks they are the center of not only the world but the universe, and their culture is the center of everything. When in actual fact, if you travel around, you understand the world isn't like that. And I learned so much when I traveled east. I do travel west sometimes towards the Americas, but when I travel east, I think I learn more.
Definitely. And you know, the last line you said, probably I think it's more prevalent in UK because they were center, at least they were forcefully the center of the world at some point, in the
Yeah,
past. So maybe, like that part of it. And like, like you said, like you'd like traveling. So during your playing career, did you hope for, okay, I wish some team from maybe Italy or maybe France, someone offers me a contract
yeah.
so I can go?
That's again very good question. Every professional footballer now you have people listening, and you can look up the internet and you can do a Wikipedia, Google search, and find out who you played for. So for me, my clubs were I started Clyde, then I went to Chelsea, Everton, Tranmere Rovers, Kilmarnock, Motherwell. Right, fine, good. Every player has got an alternative career that they might have had they made different choices. My alternative career with clubs that came in for me at the same time would have been Clyde, but it then wouldn't have been Chelsea. It would have been Dundee United. They tried to buy me, which was another Scottish club. Then after that, when I left Chelsea, there was interest from Inter Milan. That didn't come to anything. But then Paris Saint-Germain tried to buy me right at the end of my Chelsea time. So I could have gone instead to Everton. I could have gone PSG. And then after Everton, Galatasaray from Turkey wanted to buy me. So when I looked through my whole career, it could have read completely differently, and a lot of it could have been abroad, in the European continent, because I had opportunities to go there. I came very close to moving to Turkey to play for Galatasaray midway through my career, and I liked Turkey when I went there. I loved Istanbul, a phenomenal city. Um, and I think, and they're a big club, they were playing European football. At that time, the British clubs were banned from Europe because of the Heysel Stadium disaster that it involved Liverpool fans. So most of my career, I didn't get European football because the English clubs were banned. So had I gone to Paris or Istanbul, I could have played in the European Cup as it was then, or Champions League. So the temptation was there all the way through my career. And I think I probably would have taken that chance to go and play in another country had it not been for one thing. And the one thing is, I played for my country. So I got chances to travel with my country and play for Scotland all over Europe and all over the world. And maybe that satisfied my need to play football abroad.
Definitely. And I think like more than I don't know much about Paris and France, like the culture. It might be similar to maybe across Europe, but although it's different, it might be similar. But of course, Galatasaray would have been a different thing because it's I think a merging of maybe European and Asian culture because it's basically you have Istanbul in two parts. And yeah, when I was there too, like although it felt like I had one day for the Chelsea Liverpool game I think last year, the Super Cup. And although like because I come from Asia, so you kind of get okay, yeah, this is like a Asian mentality type. And although like it's just like such a big difference, although it's both of them are in the same part, in the same place, maybe just maybe in a radius of maybe 10 miles, it's completely different to like
Yeah.
what it is like. So it's quite like I think like that would have been a very good thing for you
I,
because
I, I would have found that very interesting because Turkey did. I think it was Ataturk who was the leader, and he faced west, but most of Turkey faces east. You know, and I loved the concept, and because I had an interest in Eastern cultures anyway, that was something that, although many British people might not have felt the same, it would have been something that would have intrigued me, and I would have loved to have known about it and felt it and lived there. I see, there's two things to let you know. You're talking about different cultures. The Parisian culture would have been fabulous for me because very artistic, and I'm very interested in the arts, so that would have been perfect for me. And, but also look at other places you could go. You have to remember you're kind of supposed to be doing it for the job, not just for the culture. And I had to always remember that was the reasons why I was doing it. The other thing about, I come from Glasgow originally, and Glaswegians are quite unusual in Britain. The Asian culture in Glasgow is extraordinary and always has been. People often talk about what is the normal food of Scottish people, right? So, and people, if you go and look at it, they will tell you it's a thing called haggis and various other things. No, it's not. It's curry. We love and live for curry from various parts of India, Pakistan, Bangalore, and all the way down to Iraq and Iran. We love that culture of food, and it was a big thing when I was growing up. That wasn't as big a thing in the rest of the UK and the rest of Scotland. That we loved that culture because we had a love of the food to start with, and also we kind of admired the culture. So it was something that I'd maybe considered. That's why I would have went as far as Turkey, which is not that far east, but it wouldn't have been a problem for me at all.
Definitely, like since you were like someone who like to travel and probably into culture because of maybe your education, just because that gives makes you more mature, I think, like compared to maybe someone else, like a footballer who didn't probably focus on education, probably he or she would just go and play game or maybe roam around instead of maybe enjoying the culture. And even that is not wrong, but like post your career, like many of them I have seen, like you said, Stephen or maybe even Graham, they move towards Asia and they in coaching capacity. Like, did you ever consider that okay, I can go there, this is also option, and maybe I can even enjoy the culture because that's something you wanted to do?
Yes, I'm very tempted. Particularly after what I do is I travel and take holidays. It's a big old world out there, and maybe one of the difficulties of traveling. I mean, I went south, I went east and southeast a lot when I was maybe a little bit younger. But when I stopped playing football, I was very fortunate to become a commentator, as I say, a co-commentator and an analyst for the BBC and for some television channels in the UK as well. And what that does is it's a very good problem to have. But that means every summer I either go to the World Cup for 4 weeks or I go to the European Championships. So I'm quite often traveling. So I've been lucky enough, I went to, as I mentioned, South Korea for the Japan-Korea one. I was there for the month, and I deeply fell in love with the country. Absolutely fell in love with the culture and the country of South Korea. But also, I've been to Russia for the last one and traveled around Russia, and that is a big old country, which has so many different cultures within it. I was fortunate also to do the Brazil World Cup, which obviously was absolutely fantastic. So when I wanted to sometimes do my traveling during the summer with my family, well, I couldn't because I was working all around the world anyway. So would you believe this was the year where I was going to really start traveling much more with my family, with my son and my daughter can't. She's doing her doctor work, but my wife and my son, we were all going to start traveling this year. And of course, we can travel this year, but maybe one day again we will. But lots of my friends, and I mentioned Stephen Constantine, but a good number of my friends do travel the world as coaches. I've got a friend called Dylan Kerr, and he's mostly been based in Southeast Asia, and he was in Laos for a while, but he also has coached in Africa as well. And if I had turned my thoughts to coaching, I'm pretty sure I would have been traveling around the world, coaching around the world. That would have been the perfect way to coach. I don't think I would have been as interested in staying in the UK as a coach. I would like to have traveled around the world coaching. I do another show. One of my other jobs is I do a World Service program, a BBC World Service program called World Football. And every week we talk to people from around the world about football and its effect. Now, it might be the Copa Libertadores, it might be a cup somewhere in China, but we get to know and talk to some of the people that British people do not know about or have no interest in. For me, it's a deep love. I love that radio program that we send out in the World Service, and it's I've only been doing it for 2.5 years now, and for all the fact that it doesn't pay a lot of money, and in Britain nobody knows about it, or very few people know about it, it is the perfect job for me. Absolutely perfect job, with one exception. If only I would be allowed to travel to do these interviews. But apart from that, it's a wonderful, wonderful, it's a wonderful show. And any listeners, it's certainly, if you don't know about it, it's certainly worth listening to, because we talk to some of the most fantastic stories. That's how I got to know Stephen Constantine, through that show.
So what's the show's name?
It's called World Football on the BBC World Service. It goes out every week
Okay,
on a
I'll,
Friday.
okay. So even we go on Friday. So I'll try catching up on your show. Like
You
probably
can
some.
you can get that. It's that they're on podcast for the BBC, so don't
Okay,
worry.
okay,
You
sure,
can catch up
sure.
in a
Yeah.
hundred.
No, anyways, I would be able to catch up because the time difference probably when we do and when you do, it's not going to be the same time. So yeah, so that's not a thing. So like you said, like if you were coaching, probably would have traveled much more.
Mhm.
So was coaching not something that you wanted to venture out into?
No, it wasn't. I think a lot of footballers, when they finished playing, they were looking for something else to do in their life. Um, I had the very unusual idea that I didn't I didn't like the idea of fame. So I kind of blew that and made a mistake by becoming a footballer. And then after that, I made another mistake by going into television and radio, which made me a little bit famous here. But I didn't have any interest in fame. And I don't have any kind of love of material things. I just have no interest. The things I want to do is go and see things and experience things. So the idea of becoming a coach means that you have to maybe try to be a manager, which means you give your life to it 24/7. And you may well give your entire life to it. You will not see your family growing up to the level that you want to, because you will have to move. You spend unbelievable hours with the team and all the other things you have to do. And I have to say, I love football, but I didn't love it that much to give my entire life away. We only get one life. There's many other things I wanted to do. So, in that simple terms, I made the decision even before I became a professional that I would never become a coach. Well, I say a coach, I would coach, but I wouldn't become a manager. There's different things we think about in the UK. Coach, you can help coach kids. I can do that, no problem at all. I can do specialist coaching for individuals. I can do that. But the idea of running an entire club, no, I never even considered it. But then I made a mistake again near the end of my career. A man who knew me quite well, he got in touch and said he was buying a football club in Scotland. And because he was buying this football club, he knew nothing about football, and asked, could I go and run the club for him? And I said, well, I'm not being manager. He said, no, be chief executive. So for 2 years, I ran a Premier Scottish club called Motherwell as chief executive, but also playing at the same time, which is a very, very unusual role. In fact, I believe it might be the only one in football in the world who's been a player and a chief executive at the same time. And that was interesting. And I did that for 2 years, and then I became the chief executive for 2 more years. But it ended up being the same problem as the manager. It was 24/7. It was 7 days a week. And I wanted to remember to live my life. There was music, art, culture, my family, everything that I wasn't seeing. So I was very happy to leave that. And that's when I was very fortunate to fall into, television and radio. Now, you asked the question, why didn't I do coaching? I would ask you, if someone pays you money to go and watch a football game and talk about it and then go back home with no stress, would you turn that job down? Because I didn't want to.
Not probably, but no, no, the form many of the former players I've spoken to, they say like you just like the daily interaction of maybe going off, being around the club, and like the camaraderie, or just being there for training. So that's the reason I asked you, because many of them miss that, I think, like post playing.
That's a very good question. Again, I didn't have it. I didn't have that feeling when I played football. My friends were generally not footballers. They were, musicians. They were artists. They were road sweepers. Anything. I like to keep my two lives separate because you can get lost in certain lives, like particularly football. People tell you how brilliant you are, and you might start believing them. And in actual fact, you're just kicking a ball around to keep this
Oh yeah,
realistic.
yeah.
My entire family were doing great work. All my brothers and sisters were doing great work, helping the community with teaching and things like that. I was kicking a ball around. I may well be seen as the family failure because I didn't do that. So I didn't want to be tempted into that life. And I wanted a much more simple life. And I certainly had never had any interest of that other side of it where there's A, fame, B, huge money, parties, discos, lots of different women. It just didn't appeal. I had no interest. The boys at the training ground, to be honest, I'd come from a different direction. So I'd been doing a degree, I'd been coming from education, I had different interests. So although I got on perfectly well with them, um, they were my work colleagues, and I liked them, but they were my work colleagues. And it's often, yeah, I often say this to people who ask that question. They say, well, you didn't spend all your time with them, hanging out with them and, going out with them. And I often say, do you go out with all your work colleagues? Is that your best friends? And most people say, oh, no, they're kind of my friends. They're okay, but they're colleagues. My other friends are somewhere else. And that's what I was. So when it stopped, I didn't miss that because I had plenty of other friends. I didn't miss the day-to-day routine because I had so many other interests. I was writing, I was doing other things. So that I didn't miss that. I quite liked the idea of spending more time with my family, so I wasn't going to miss that. I did miss one thing more than anything else. I missed one, maybe tiny two things. The first thing I missed, and absolutely missed, was the fitness. The fitness of being a footballer and a professional is fabulous. When your body's in that good condition, you feel you can take on the world, and it's a lovely feeling for 2 decades and a decade before that, always feeling as if I could run up K2. I feel, wow, I feel so fit all the time. And it's hard to keep that when you stop playing. And I loved it. Some people moan about staying fit and training. I love training. And as I say, when I stop talking to you, I'm going out to run up a hill. I'm going to be away for well over an hour hill running. I missed that. Maybe the one other thing, and it's a good question you asked, Subhashish, is that creativity, the creativity of the way I played, I loved that. And creativity is my favorite thing. Any job I do or any work I do, currently just now, I've just finished writing a book. And it's the creative side of that, which is the absolute joy of my life. And I love the creativity of football, of how I played it. I tried always to be the most creative player in the field. And many of your listeners won't know what kind of player I was. Um, well, to try and give a little explanation, um, the first time I ever watched David Silva play, I thought, that's it. That's what I was trying to do. It's exactly what I was trying to do. That was my style. Now, I'm not saying I was as good as David Silva, but that was exactly the style of player that I was. And that's the only player I've ever kind of known who was so similar in style to the way I tried to play. Notice I say tried to play because that's all you can do. So, in answer to your question, yes, I missed one or two things, but not enough to make me want to keep on doing it every single day.
I have done like around 600 videos like this, like the interview maybe around 300, and maybe non-interview more 300ish in the past 1.5 to 2 years. And I think this is second time I'm trying to say this, like when you said like football is just kicking a ball around. The second time I'm actually saying it because I'm a computer engineer,
Mm-hmm.
and I also did my education in football. Post that, I was in Barcelona in some camps, and I did some certification, and I realized that no, it's not something you want to do, because it's not like it's bad. It's a good job.
Yeah,
You may get paid well, you get the fame, but I don't know, like maybe because I have the education background or something, it's like you feel you're not adding up to the human race. Like, yeah, you will be good, but what are you leaving behind? Like,
yeah, yeah. No, you make a very good point. And I had an answer to that when I started playing for Chelsea. When I went down to London in 1983, um, there was a lot of racism in the game. And I had been heavily involved in anti-racism, anti-apartheid campaigns when I was a student. And when I went down and found this racism aimed towards some of my own players by my own fans, I decided then to start a campaign. So you may not, it's kicking a ball about, but if you use that fame in a positive light way, then actually it can become worthwhile. So you make a brilliant point. At its core, it has limited value for what it is. It also gives great entertainment, and I understand the importance of that. You do understand the importance of that. Like you're getting people out there. The one exciting day of the week might be that day, and you're giving them that creativity. That's why you always must give your very, very best. So it's got an importance there. It's certainly got an importance if you look at what some. I mean, it's taken many years. I mean, I started this campaigning in '83. There wasn't anyone else doing it, and look at it now. Everyone's taking the knee. Everyone's doing, and it's great. It's fabulous to see, and I'm so delighted. But when I was doing it, I was on my own. It was like, why is everyone not doing this? Why is everyone not getting behind this? But it was so ingrained in the culture of football fans, not football fans at the time. So yes, I agree. It is frivolous. It is kicking a ball. But if you, and I hate using the word use, but I have to use it, if you use football the right way, it can be used positively and it can have a very positive effect. And if you look at what Raheem Sterling and Marcus Rashford and various players, and it's not just football, it's other sports as well. You don't have to be a bore about it. You don't have to be, moaning about everything all the time. But if you can make it that you make your thoughts clear that everyone should be treated as equal, then that sport's a great place to do that because you use your fame in a positive way. And there's nothing better than sport to show equality because it doesn't matter what color you are, it doesn't matter where you come from. It's are you good enough to do that? And that's a lovely thing about sport. You can actually bring those two things together.
no, I agree 100% on that. Like how you mentioned some names like Sterling and maybe Rashford. Like what he has been doing campaigning for, like a lot of children. Probably what something he himself went through. But again, like what I think is that is a not Rashford's work. That is the inefficiency of the government, which people should be questioning in primarily. It's not something he has to do. So I would say that the people who are probably voting are probably making a mistake, like in the longer run. So I wouldn't. It's something what on Rashford's part he's doing amazing. He's going out of his way, but him doing it, it's not a great thing because that's the basic need that should be provided anyway. But what he, yeah, you were saying,
I know, I agree, but I'm a little bit older than you, and I have watched governments after government after government not doing the job. So now and again, they need a nudge, and that's what politics is. It's making a nudge. Now, I've been asked many times to get involved in politics, by prime ministers, in the UK. But I wouldn't want to be part of one single party. I would like to, if possible, affect issues. Um, and sometimes that's what it needs. It needs people to be told, people to have something explained to them. Um, and politicians have got many, many jobs to do, and their heads are usually down, not up. They're looking at the things they have to do around them. And they sometimes miss the big picture because quite often they're not living with us. Many of them are not living among us. So sometimes they need help. They need a little nudge. They need told. So that's why I'm comfortable with, everyone from Megan Rapinoe to Marcus Rashford. Yeah, explain to people it's just fair. You're not even wanting special treatment. You just want fairness. It's not that much to ask, is it? So,
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's I mean, like, yeah, that I think like it. I think that should just be a basic need. Like everyone should get, irrespective of like you shouldn't be like, having someone else come and do it. Like just basic thing everyone should get.
yeah, there is a concept and it was quite big in the UK about 5-10 years ago, and I use the word nudge, and it's called nudge culture. Sometimes if you make these big, can you do this massive, massive, big thing, then politicians maybe don't do it. But if you nudge and say, could you move that a little bit? And then somebody else nudges and somebody else nudges and you move it and you move it. It's a very British thing, an American thing as well. You move the culture along little by little by little. Um, and there's something to be said for that because people then sometimes start behaving in the right way. But this is a cultural thing as well, which is what I'm very, very keen on. I watch different cultures when I go to them and see how, what we think is the right thing or the fair thing or the way to behave. Can I give you one story?
Yeah,
Very quickly to explain the difference of cultures for me. And it's in this, if I go to a football game in the UK, when you go out, there'll be rubbish everywhere. People have left cans and maybe some bottles and paper and rubbish. And we get cleaners to come and clean it up. That's fine. I was in South Korea in Seoul, and the first game that South Korea won in that World Cup, and I was in I think the 87th floor of this co-ed hotel, co-ex hotel in Seoul. And I looked down at 2 in the morning, and there were 2 million people down below me, all wearing the same t-shirt and all partying. And I had to get up the next morning at 6 to get a flight to go to South Korea, southern South Korea. And I thought, this place is going to be trashed. They were partying. I got up at 4 in the morning, had a look down. They were still there. Millions of people partying. I got up at 6, looked out the window, they'd gone, went downstairs, went to get on my taxi. The place was spotless. There was no rubbish. They'd picked up all the rubbish that they'd left. Now, you try to get people in the UK to do that, clean up. I mean, you're wasting your time 20 years ago. See now, because we've nudged a little bit and say, well, don't spread litter, don't do these things. It's much less of a problem than it used to. It's still a problem, but it's much less of a problem. People don't do it because we've kind of not made it a big law. We've made it, right, this is the right thing to do. We've nudged you in a certain direction and it's good for everyone. But that's the culture. The culture in one place is we will do everything for the community. And the other place, well, you need help a little bit. And we try to make you help. And that's what that's not big politics, you know, and big politics maybe can't fix that. That's cultural politics, which, you know, you do at a ground level. And if it means a celebrity or a famous person or a footballer having a little word with the community, then so be it. It's a good thing. So it's not always the politicians.
Definitely, and like of course, like every country would love to have someone like Marcus Rashford doing those kind of stuff, because I think those problems are prevalent in every society, irrespective of where you go all around the world. Like what he's doing is amazing. Like take nothing away from that. And yeah, so I think like we are close to around 45 minutes. So I'll ask you two or three questions before we wrap up. I don't want
Yeah.
to halt you on your run, and probably I'll move it back towards football more or less now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this might be plain, straightforward, like reporter questions. So you played for a while, and like you said, for a lot of clubs, had a lot of opportunities. Maybe different. It would be in an alternative universe. You could have played for PSG,
Mhm.
Galatasaray. But during your time as a professional player, do you have any one particular moment that you enjoyed the most or you're most proud of?
Um, I have you want a football moment. I'm desperate to give you a football moment. I mean, as many
No, no.
goals
It
as
it, it can be general. Like it can be
well.
maybe like
I
you
can
said, like
remember. I can remember the specific moment. I know the moment. The moment is I was 19. I was playing for Chelsea, and I'd scored a couple of goals down at Stamford Bridge. We'd won the game. I lived nearby, so I would you believe it? I used to walk home from Stamford Bridge to Earls Court. I didn't have a car at the time. I was still very young. And you know, can you imagine it? Player of the year at Chelsea doesn't have a car and walks home after the game. But I wanted to be normal. And I was walking out the pitch at the ground one day, and this old man came and walked beside me, and he said, "You're Nevin, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah." And he said, "I came out to see you today. I don't get out of my house very much, but I came out to see you. Someone told me you're a very good player and very exciting, and I've come out to see you. First game I've seen in years." And I really enjoyed it. You played very well. You were very exciting, very skillful, and I even came to see your warm up because I used to do this strange warm up where I did tricks and skills with the ball. And I said, I was young, and I said, "Oh, thanks." And I went to carry on the conversation, and he just walked away. And that is the most important moment of my entire career because at that moment I realized what I'm doing for people who I will never meet. I am making somebody happy, giving this guy a chance to get out of his house, something to talk about, something to share. He might have all sorts of difficulties and problems, but for that 1 hour and a half, I helped make him happy. And that is a massive thing to be able to do and give. So, yes, I've scored, I've played for Scotland against England at Wembley. I've played in the FA Cup final for Everton against Liverpool. I've scored for Chelsea against Arsenal and Spurs. All these things. I've scored in the Merseyside Derby. So many things I could do. 850 professional games. But that's the moment. It's walking out, understanding that it's not about me. It's actually about what I can do and what I can give. And and people often say, well, that's all very well, Saint Patrick. I'm not being Saint Patrick. I am just saying that made me think I will never walk onto a football field and give anything other than 100% every moment of every game because that moment might be the moment that made that man happy. So, yeah, that's it. There was another moment, by the way. My dad, who's a big part of my career, when I got my first Scotland cap, he'd been telling my family since I was 6 that I would play for Scotland. And he never told me. And then the day I got my first game for Scotland, the whole family said, "Yeah, Dad knew." And I didn't know. I never knew. I didn't even think I was going to be a footballer.
Definitely. So I'll wrap it up with two final questions. Although I had a lot, like maybe about your being a DJ, and I'll leave that all for maybe next time. And I wanted to ask you, like, if you are given a choice, would you watch a game or would you read a book?
What a good question. um, oh, I'll be honest, it really depends on the book and the game. It really does. If I was, a better question would be, would I go and see my favorite team, or would I go and see my favorite band singer?
Okay.
And I'm afraid the band and the singer works every time for me. It beats football. There's lots and lots of games of football, but the art of music and sometimes writing and theatre, specifically go to see my favourite music, uh, that probably slightly trumps a game of football because I've seen many games of football. Um, and also, you say going to see a game. There's a difference between going to see a game and going to playing in a game. Playing the least important game I ever played in my career, right at the start when I was playing in the third tier of Scottish football, right, is more important to me than going to watch the Champions League final. To give you the scale of it. Playing is so much more fun, important to you, better than actually watching. Watching's great, I love it, but it doesn't come close, not even close at all. So it's a very, very good question. Um, which, to be honest, you've got. I've just written this book, and it's only out it's out in May, right? It's as if you've read it already. By the questions you've asked me, it's as if you've read this book already, because as you can see, I come from quite a different angle to some players, and some of the stories that I wrote about, and many of just about all the stories in this book, tell you that I was an outsider and inside the game, seeing how strange I thought it looked because I thought I'm the one who's normal. They're really weird, these guys. And that's kind of really the crux of the whole book and my kind of career. I didn't dislike them. I liked most footballers, and some of them are very close friends. But in reality, it's a very weird life, which I like the actual playing. The rest of it, I could take or leave.
The only reason I asked about the book instead of maybe music was because you said like you just finished writing a book, so I
Yeah.
thought, and I
Well,
saw.
I'll tell you, you came close to the perfect question because it's the creativity. And I mentioned it before. I love the creativity of playing football and creating things. Writing is fabulously creative, and everyone should try writing. It doesn't matter how good or bad you are, because your brain starts doing things that you didn't think it would do. When you start writing, your brain picks things up, and you lead in different areas, and you will be a better writer than you think you are when you start. So it's certainly a thing to do, and it doesn't need to be to sell. It's for your own benefit, the creative ideas that you can come up with. So the creativity, that's a big thing. And the writing's great. In fact, I whisper a little story to everyone in Nepal, and nobody else knows. This new book of mine that's coming out in May, I've already written the next one because I so enjoyed that one. I've already written the next one's gone. I'll tell the publishers later.
Definitely, definitely. And you're like, so we'll wrap it up with one final question. Like, I thought that I generally say ask this question in relation to maybe football, maybe as a player, as a coach. But for you, you have done so many things. Like, I would just say, any advice for anyone, like listening, anyone in any walks of life.
Oh yeah, there's one very, very simple advice. I'm not arrogant enough often to give much advice, but if I've learned one thing through the many, many different jobs and the things I've done throughout my life, I've been very fortunate. If you do something for the love of it, you will be better at it. It's just really simple. So I played football for the love of it. If I played football from fear because I wanted to be famous or because I was scared of losing, I wouldn't have been so creative or as good. But because I'd done it for the joy and the love of it, I was able to express myself. And it doesn't matter if that's in writing, if that's in football. Now, not everyone can get that. Not every job is exactly like that. But if you can find either a job or an interest where you get the joy, follow it. You've got to follow it. you only get one life, and it's kind of pointless throwing it all away in things you don't like. So, and you will be better at something if you do it through joy. So, if you're a youngster who wants to play football or any sport, remember the fun. The fun is the thing that makes you better.
Definitely. And like on that note, Pat, thank you so much for talking to me, and I wish you all the best for the book, which is coming out in May, and hopefully by then you can even come to Nepal. Maybe after that post your release, to even maybe release it on in Nepal
Yeah.
over here. Like because we don't get books which are like released in UK or maybe even in India, we don't get it here. Like only selected few come here, so probably you can release it here also.
I
So
will.
yeah,
I will try to. I may do some podcasts, some work with the BBC, another company where I read the book and we let people hear some of it via podcast. So that might actually be able to be picked up anywhere, very cheap.
definitely. And like on that note, Pat, thank you so much, and hope to have you again. Like, talk to you again soon, or maybe even meet you in Nepal someday, probably after everything dies out. And till then, take care, stay safe. Bye. Thank you once again.
It's been a pleasure talking to